Your sensors are correct. Do not adjust your heading. You've discovered the Omega Particle, streaming to the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Here's your host, the anchorman of the Federation, the Doctor of Dilithium. This is Jonathan Wiegand.
Hello and welcome to the Omega Particle, the Star Trek podcast you didn't know you needed until now. I am your gracious host, Jonathan Wiegand, and I want to welcome you to this inaugural episode. So, we're here, and today we are going to cover how this podcast came to be, what content we're going to cover, and, a quick look at our namesake, the Omega Particle. Now, as we begin this excursion into podcast excellence, let's discuss the structure and, dare I say, the idea behind the show. So, for me, it's really important to do a weekly, sometimes even bi-weekly, if life happens and comes up, episodes of the Omega Particle. Simply because there's so much going on in Trek right now. We have Picard and we have Discovery. And I would love to do episodic reviews of the new ones that come out. I think that would be a lot of fun and it'd be great to listen to. However, what we will not do, and a lot of Star Trek podcasts are primarily this, we will not do episodic reviews in an entire series. Now, I'm sure many of you, like me, have seen DS9, Voyager, TNG multiple times. I've seen probably each 5 times. So, for me, I really don't care what Matt from Nebraska thinks about DS9 Season 4, Episode 2. I mean, personally, I don't care. I've seen every episode. I know it backwards and forwards. I really don't want to hear somebody's review on it. So for me, I think it'd be more exciting and more fun to do the newer episodes as they come out, week by week. And here's the kicker. This is a structure and an idea that some of my favorite podcasts do, and I want to copy that because if I'm doing all this time researching, if I'm doing all this time investing into a podcast, I want to do subjects that I think are neat and I think are cool. So the first subject and the first deep dive we are going to do is, I'm happy to announce, hold on to your hats, we're doing Khan. Yes, the immortal Khan, famously known from the original series Space Seed and his amazing performance in Star Trek II Wrath of Khan, in my humble opinion, the best Star Trek movie ever made. And let's not talk about Into Darkness because no one needs to know about that. So going with Khan, I think that's a great way to start the podcast, having this deep dive into a character, because we don't know a lot about him. Outside of Space Seed, Wrath of Khan, we really don't know who he is, how he came to power. To put it in perspective, he ruled 1/4 of the planet Earth during the 1990s eugenics war. How did a child that was genetically altered, genetically engineered, come from that to brutal dictator? I think that's an interesting story that I personally would want to know about, and I think you people would want to know too. So instead of doing a long, boring episodic review of a series we've watched 8-9 times, we're going to do new subject matter that I haven't learned about before. So yes, Khan will be the first, and it's going to be real fun and interesting. It'll probably be about a 2-3 weeks series. I'm excited about this project and interested to learn more about one of the greatest villains in all of sci-fi. So one of the main issues I have is that a lot of these Star Trek podcasts don't even finish. They get 6 episodes in, 8 episodes in, 15 episodes in, and they don't even finish. That's why it's frustrating to me, because I mean, I was getting into DS9. This will be cool to hear maybe like a podcast on it, maybe different perspectives. And everything I found went through season 1, maybe season 2, and just kind of fell off. And I don't want to run into that trap, A, because I previously said it's kind of boring and it's not new and fresh. And we're only going to bring you the best relevant content in the Alpha Quadrant. So moving on how this podcast came to be. So I was super excited when I heard that they were bringing back Jean-Luc Picard, because in this series, this is the first time we've actually been able to see the future of the Federation. After the 2001, 2002 movie, we really had nothing. We only had prequels. We had Discovery, which is great, but prequel. We had Enterprise, which is terrible, but prequel. So we really don't know how the Federation has evolved, who they came to be, and are they sticking to their value. One night I was watching Picard with my wife, Stormy, and she is very supportive and loves to share in things that I love, even though she has no idea about anything in Star Trek. I mean, it's very, very sweet. But so we were watching, I think it was one of the first episode 1 or 2, and they were talking about the Romulan cube that they got from the Borg, and I had to go and deep dive about the cube and about the Borg and assimilation, and then into the Romulans, and then into the neutral zone, and all this information started coming up, and I was like, wow, this thing I love so much, I haven't really talked to. Shout out to Alan. He's been great. He loves Next Generation. However, he's never really seen Voyager or DS9 or Enterprise or Discovery. He's never really expanded his Star Trek canon. So it's really hard to talk about these things. I'm like, wow, did you see how they were portraying the Klingons in Discovery? Or what do you think about the Dominion War? And do you think it was the right decision for them? And blah, 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 blah. And I really can't have that discussion. So I was sitting there with my wife and I was like, do you know what would be a cool idea? Be able to talk about on a weekly basis, whether character deep dives or going into specific things. I was like, this would be a neat idea to do. And so Stormy's been great, very supportive. And so now we invested. I'm sitting down in my basement with this makeshift sound-proof booth, and it's been a joy, and I love it. And the thing that really turned me on about this whole process was the content, not about the artwork or getting on iTunes or anything like that. The thing that really made me excited was about making, researching, and producing the content. And that's how I think I've stumbled onto something I'll enjoy. I just want to thank Stormy for all her help and encouragement in this podcast creation. I really couldn't do it without her. Now what we all came here for, the science and theories behind the Omega particle, our namesake at this podcast. Now the Omega particle is a very highly unstable molecule, and it's believed to be the most powerful substance known to man. It is also believed that a few molecules can power an entire civilization. So people want this thing. People are searching for it. They're hungry for it. However, since it's so violently unstable, when it explodes, this is the kicker, it destroys subspace, which makes warp travel impossible. So if a couple of these molecules go off, let's say, in this fruited plane known as the Alpha Quadrant, subspace, warp travel, impossible. What would we do? So that's why Starfleet gave out something called the Omega Directive. And they said if anybody comes across these molecules, to destroy them immediately and keep the explosion to a minimum. However, the only issue is there's no real proper way to contain the molecule. So there's no way to contain it. It's very dangerous. So that's why Starfleet said, just knock it out. Don't even give somebody the opportunity to bring it to a planet or bring it somewhere that could cause further damage, which makes sense. So fun fact, some Federation cosmologists believe and theorize that the Omega particles are one of the substances known to the Big Bang. In Voyager 7 and 9, just dismiss that as a creation myth. So we'll get into that maybe later if we ever cover 7 of 9. The first time we see the Omega particle in Star Trek is in Voyager, Season 4, episode The Omega Directive, named after Starfleet's call sign for this molecule. So Voyager comes across Catherine Janeway gets the flashing Omega Greek symbol on the screen saying, you know what to do. Go to the ready room and get briefed. So it's captain's eyes only information, and she decides to share with her bridge crew, which makes sense doing their situation being in the Delta Quadrant. So, since they now know what to do, 7 of 9 is a Borg. See, there's a great Borg history with the Omega Particle. We're not going to go a deep dive into it, but they believe that the Omega Particle is absolute perfection. And I think 28 Borg vessels were destroyed in trying to contain this molecule. And 7 of 9 even says, we had it for like 2 or 3 seconds and it was pure perfection in typical Borg language. And I think, wow, that's really crazy to sacrifice so much just for a couple seconds. However, that definitely influences her on the bridge of Voyager, because then they try to make this containment field that can house it for a couple seconds, and then they shoot a gravimetric torpedo at it to contain the explosion and only do limited damage to the subspace. So that's the last time we really see, and the only time we really see, the Omega Particle in Star Trek canon. Now, there are a few like little things like in Voyager, like Q Jr. comes up and is like, hey, let's go throw out some Omega Particles together and see what happens, you know? And then there's a couple more deep dives into the Omega Particles in the book series, but I'm not going to do that in this inaugural episode. We're going to save the deep dives for subjects I really, really want to know about and you really, really want to know about. And if you want to do more information, please Google all you want on the Omega Particle. So as we wrap up today, I just want to go over, again, we're going to try to release on a weekly basis, bi-weekly sometimes, and I'll let you know before, but I just want to say thank you for all listening and being here. I appreciate all the support from my wife, Stormy, and all my friends, and looking forward to expanding and conducting this excursion into podcast excellence. Also, if you have any suggestions for topics that you want to hear, or you don't like what I said, and you just want to have a debate on a particular issue or person in the Star Trek canon, please feel free to email me at omegaparticlepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is omegaparticlepodcast@gmail.com. I am your host, Jonathan Wiegand, and thank you for discovering the Omega Particle.